Welcome to PAATH History YouTube channel. Subscribe our channel for regular notification and follow our official Facebook page and Twitter handle. Follow us on Instagram, like our video and comment. Today we are going to discuss about the Vedic economy. As might be expected without cities, the early Aryans did not have an advanced technology. But they certainly enjoyed an advantageous position in relation to their adversaries. They used horses and chariots, which were not known to the free Vedic people. The horse or Ashva is mentioned 215 times in the Rig Veda and may have been common among gods as well as humans. The horse-drawn chariot with spoke wheels finds frequent mention in the Rig Veda and subsequent Vedic texts. Possibly they also used some better weapons of bronze. Their knowledge of metals, however, seems to have been limited. The Rig Veda mentions only one metal called Ayas. In view of the widespread use of bronze in Iran around the middle of the 2nd millennium BC, the word has been taken to mean bronze. Yet bronze objects assignable to the period of the Rig Veda have not hitherto been found in any significant quantity at the sites excavated in the land of the seven rivers. The evidence for the use of bronze on any considerable scale being slight, there is no archaeological basis for the view that the early Aryans were highly skilled smiths or produced tools and weapons superior to those of Harappans. Nor did the Rig Veda people possess any knowledge of iron. The Aryans came to India as semi-nomadic people with a mixed pastoral and agricultural economy in which cattle rearing played a predominant role. Cattle formed their most valued possession and the chief form of their wealth. A wealthy person was called Gomath. Prayers were offered for the increase in cattle population. The sacrificial priest was rewarded for his services with cattle, and the cow was the chief medium of exchange. Cattle were often the cause of intertribal wars. Thus, the word for battle came to be known as Govishti, literally a search for cows. Several other terms for battle like Goshu, Gojit, Govid, Govindu, Goshti, Goshati were also derived from Go, a general term for cattle. Since cattle seem to have been tended by common herdsmen, it has been suggested that members of the tribe collectively owned them. Moreover, those who herded their cows in the same cowshed came to belong to the same Gotra, a word which later came to indicate descent from a common ancestor and hence an exogamous clan unit. The daughter was known as Duhitri, milker of the cow. The cow is described in one or two places as not to be killed or aghna, but this may imply its economic importance. It was not yet held sacred, its politicization being a recent phenomenon. Both oxen and cows were in fact slaughtered for food. Beef was a delicacy offered to the guests. The Rig Veda mentions the word Atithinir, cows fit for guests, and the name of the Vedic hero, Atithigva, means literally slaying cows for guests. A later text, Panini's Ashtadhyayi, even describes a guest as a cow killer or Goghna, but some scholars disagree with this translation, so it is a controversial issue. R.S. Sharma has drawn attention to the many derivations of the word go or cow in the Rig Veda. Further indications of the importance of the cattle come from other words containing the go infix. The tribal chief was known as Janasya Gova. Measures of time included Godhuli or dusk and Samgava or morning. Measures of area, distance included Gabhyuti and Gocharman. The buffalo was known as Gauri or Govala. Gojit or winner of cows was a word for a hero. A wealthy person was known as Gomat or owner of cattle. One of the epithets of the god Indra was Gopati or lord of cattle. Some scholars have used the number of references to pastoral versus agricultural activities in the family books as an index of their relative importance and have concluded that while cattle rearing were of overwhelming importance, agriculture was either a subsidiary activity or one that was practiced by non-Indo-Aryans. However, the frequency of usage in religious and ritualistic texts and contexts may not be an accurate indicator of the relative importance of these activities in everyday life. Apart from word frequencies, it is necessary to examine the nature and content of the references. Aryan Nandi has drawn attention to the many references to agricultural activity in the Rig Veda and argues that it was by no means marginal. The verbs bap or to sow and kris or to cultivate occur along with references to various agricultural implements. In addition to cows, goats and sheep are also domesticated both for milk and meat. Not surprisingly, quantities of charred bones of cattle and other animals have been found at several archaeological sites. Bhagavanpura and Dadheri in Haryana, where the post-Harappan cultural horizons coincide with the early Vedic period, are cases in point. Cattle breeding was the chief source of livelihood of the Rig Vedic people, but they also practiced agriculture. References to agricultural activities in the Rig Veda are not many. The term krishi or to cultivate occurs rarely in it. The well-known term hola for the plough is not found, but two other terms for the plough, langala and sira, are mentioned. Ploughs were drawn by oxen and ploughshares of wood were used for cultivation. The early Aryans possessed some knowledge of seasons which promoted agriculture. The Rig Veda mentions 5 seasons. Fire was used for burning forests and making land fit for cultivation. This was an easy option available because the people did not have knowledge of iron. Copper, with which they were familiar, was not of much value for agricultural operations. Reference to ploughing, sowing, reaping, threshing, and winnowing occur in the latter portions of the Rig Veda. The agrarian economy, therefore, may have become more stable towards the end of the early Vedic period. The Rig Vedic people are known to have cultivated only one variety of grains called yava, which meant barley. Unlike cattle, land was perhaps not commonly owned by members of a tribe. The Rig Veda mentions several words for fields and the practice of measuring land, but it nowhere refers to the sale, transfer, mortgage, or gift of land by an individual. Obviously, the concept of private property on land had not struck root. Gift giving and receiving do not rule out other kinds of exchange, but trade in the Rig Vedic context was probably minimal. Butter was the mode of exchange and cattle an important unit of value. The word nishka seems to have meant a piece of gold or gold necklace, and there is no indication of the use of coins. There are prayers to the gods to give broad paths to travel and ensure a safe journey. Mention is made of chariots and carts drawn by oxen, mules, or horses. The panis, literally those who possess wealth, in some instances referred to merchants and in others to stingy people who did not perform sacrifices and hid their wealth. There are references to boats or Nau and the ocean or Samudra. Rig Veda refers to the Ashwins rescuing Bhujya in the ocean with the help of a ship with 100 oars or Shataritra. Book 10 refers to the eastern and western oceans, but both books 1 and 10 are latter books, and historians differ on whether or not the composers of the early sections of Rig Veda were familiar with sea travel, let alone sea trade. Now we are entering into the later Vedic age. Great changes occurred in the Aryan mode of life during the later Vedic age, extending from 1000 to 600 BCE, when the three Vedas, Yajur Veda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda, and Brahmanas, and a few early Upanishadas were composed. Numerous shards of painted grey ware have been discovered both in association with iron objects as well as independently at many places in western Uttar Pradesh and adjoining regions. The number of these sites would easily exceed 700 in Upper Gangetic Basin, though only a few of them have been excavated so far. The pottery has been generally associated with the later Vedic people, and from the sites excavated so far, one gets the impression that the nomadism of the early Aryan migrants were considerably undermined. They lived a settled life in their wattle and dog houses, erected on wooden poles, domesticated animals, and practiced agriculture more extensively than before. In the hymns, desire is frequently expressed for the increase of cattle, which still constituted the principle from the movable property. Agriculture, however, tended to become the chief means of livelihood in the period, and the idea of private possession of land gradually began to crystallize. The Shatapatha Brahmana devotes an entire section to rites connected with ploughing and enumerates various agricultural operations. Referring to the walking of 6, 8, 12 and 24 oxen to the plough indicate the practicing of deep ploughing. The Atharva Veda describes a ritual for leading river water into new channels. It also speaks of spells to avoid drought and excessive rains. The buffalo seems to have been tamed for agriculture. In addition to barley, the chief crop cultivated during the period was wheat or godhuma, which continues to be the staple food in the Punjab and Uttar Pradesh to this day. Rice or brihi is mentioned for the first time, though very lightly. It was not an important crop in the Upper Gangetic Basin at this stage. Beans and sesamum were also known. The latter assumed ritual importance in course of time. All this does not mean a total disappearance of pastoralism, which continued to remain a reasonably prominent feature of life. This is suggested not only by the remains of cattle bones bearing cut marks at Hastinapur or Tranjikera, etc., but also by the later Vedic texts, especially the Shatapatha Brahmana, which refers to Yajnavalkya's obdurate statement in favor of eating beef, but it is a highly controversial issue. Nevertheless, the growing importance of agriculture undoubtedly undermined the earlier pastoral economy, which could not adequately feed an increasing population. Simultaneously with the transition from a pastoral to an agricultural economy, there arose several new arts and crafts. Many of these are enumerated in the later Vedic literature. Mention may be made of smeltering, smithery or carpentry, weaving, leatherworking, jewelry making, dyeing, and pottery making. It is difficult to say how far smelters and smiths were connected with iron working. Probably they worked mostly in copper, which continued to predominate, iron still being rare. Weaving was practiced on a wide scale and perhaps remained confined mostly to women. Leatherwork, pottery, and carpentry were connected with building activities, of which we have some evidence in this period. Glass hoards and bangles found in the course of excavations provide evidence of working in glass. These objects may have been used as prestige items by a limited number of people. The latter Vedic texts refer not only to various arts and crafts, indicating progress in the differentiation of economic functions, but also to the seas and to sea voyages. All this indicates the rudimentary beginning of some kind of commerce in which the Vaishyas participated. Reference to money lending first occurs in the Shatapatha Brahmana, which describes a user of Kusidin, though definite evidence of the use of money is lacking. The term Nishka, occurring in contemporary literature, has sometimes been taken to mean a coin, but so far no actual specimens of coins of this period have come to light. With the increasing importance of agriculture and the diversification of artisanal activity, the later Vedic people gradually relegated to the background their pastoralist and semi-nomadic subsistence strategies. Their life became settled and sedentary, and they could perhaps produce enough for themselves and to a certain extent for the support of the priests and the ruling class. But they do not seem to have produced an adequate surplus for the consumption of the people engaged in non-agricultural specialized crafts and occupations. They could not therefore contribute to the growth of towns, and despite textual references to Nagara, the faint beginnings of urbanization can be seen only towards the end of the later Vedic period, when Hastinapur and Kaushambi emerged as rudimentary towns. So this is the nature of Vedic economy, and this is the end of our today's discussion. Subscribe our channel for regular notification. Follow us in Facebook and Twitter and as well as in Instagram. Like our video and comment. For any query, feel free to mail us. For details, see the description.